I never thought it would happen to me. Not like this. My name's Greg. I'm 56, live in a 3-bedroom house in Akron, Ohio, the kind of place where the neighbors still wave but don't ask too many questions. Worked 31 years at the same HVAC company before they handed me a cheap watch and a pension that doesn't stretch as far as it used to. My wife Diane is 54. We met in community college, back when her laugh didn't sound like it took effort. 2 kids, both grown. Matt's in Denver, works in IT, and Lisa's down in Cincinnati, teaching 3rd grade. They call every Sunday, like clockwork. Diane and I have our routines. Coffee at 6:30, black for me, 2 sugars for her. She does the crossword. I scroll through the news on my phone, half listening to whatever story she's picked out from Facebook. We don't fight much. Not anymore. That's the thing. When you've been married 28 years, silence isn't always peaceful. Sometimes it's just the sound of 2 people who've run out of things to say. I noticed the little things first. The way she'd linger in the grocery store parking lot after errands. Engine idling, like she was working up the energy to come back inside. How she stopped asking me to fix things around the house and just called a handyman instead. The way she'd turn her phone face down when I walked into the room. I told myself it was nothing. Middle age does that to people, right? You get tired. You stop trying as hard. Diane used to love gardening, roses mostly. Now the flower beds are overgrown and she spends more time on her phone than in the yard. I asked her about it once, just casual, and she said, "Things change, Greg." And that was that. No argument, no explanation, just distance. I fish on weekends, not because I love it, but because it gives me an excuse to sit by the lake and not talk for a few hours. Sometimes I think Diane's relieved when I go. She used to text me while I was out. "Catch anything?" or "Don't forget sunscreen." Now my phone stays quiet until I pull back into the driveway. The weird part? We still function. Bills get paid. Dishes get done. We sleep in the same bed, though I'm pretty sure she waits until I'm snoring before she lets herself drift off. We're polite. We're civilized. And maybe that's the problem. I keep telling myself this is just how marriage is after 3 decades. That the spark doesn't die. It just turns into embers, something quieter, warmer in a different way. But then I catch Diane staring out the kitchen window, her coffee gone cold, and I wonder if she's thinking the same thing, or if she's already gone and just hasn't figured out how to tell me yet. I should have asked. I should have fought. But you don't know you're standing on a trapdoor until the floor drops out from under you. And then, one Tuesday in November, it did. The house got louder after Diane left. Funny how that works. For years, I'd barely noticed the hum of the refrigerator or the ticking of the hallway clock. Now they were the only things talking to me. I kept expecting her to walk back in. Not in some dramatic movie-style reunion, just Diane shuffling through the door with her reusable grocery bags, sighing about how the store was out of the oat milk she liked. But the days stacked up, and the only thing that came back was the silence. I found one of her hair ties on the bathroom counter a week after she left, the little black kind she always wore. I picked it up, rolled it between my fingers like some kind of relic, then dropped it in the trash. Next morning, I fished it out and put it in the junk drawer. Couldn't tell you why. The kids called like usual that Sunday. Lisa asked how Mom was doing. I lied and said, fine, just out running errands. Matt didn't ask at all. Maybe he already knew. Or maybe, and this stung worse, he just didn't think to ask. I started noticing things I'd ignored before, like how Diane's side of the closet still smelled like her perfume, even though she'd taken most of her clothes. Or how the coffee maker made 1 cup too many every morning out of habit. I drank it anyway, even though it went cold before I finished. Worst were the nights. I'd lie there, staring at the ceiling, replaying every argument we never had. Should I have pushed harder when she stopped wanting to go out to dinner? Was it my fault for not asking what was wrong when she started going to bed early? Hell, maybe I should have just noticed sooner. One afternoon, I found a note in her handwriting stuck to the fridge under a magnet. Just a grocery list from months ago, eggs, almond butter, toilet paper. But seeing it there, like some kind of ghost, made my chest hurt. I took it down, then put it back up, then took it down again. I told myself she'd come back. that this was just one of those rough patches people talk about. But then I'd remember the way she'd looked at me the last morning, not angry, not sad, just done, and I knew. Whatever this was, it wasn't a patch. It was the end of the road. The silence wasn't empty anymore. It was full of all the things we'd never said. And the longer it stretched, the more I realized I didn't miss the woman who left. I missed the one who'd already been gone for years. I started noticing the receipts about 3 weeks after Diane left. Not the ones from Kroger or CVS. Those were normal. The ones from places she never used to go, a coffee shop downtown I'd never heard of, a gas station clear on the other side of town, a wine bar near the university that charged $14 for a glass of Pinot. At first, I told myself it was nothing. Maybe she'd taken up new hobbies. Maybe she was just exploring, trying to find herself after all these years. That's what people do, right? But then I found the parking stub from a hotel, the Marriott over by the business park, dated 2 days before she left. My hands shook holding that little slip of paper. I sat at the kitchen table for an hour, staring at it, running through every possible explanation. Business meeting? Book club? None of it made sense. Diane worked part-time at the library. She didn't have business meetings. I called Lisa that night. Didn't mention the receipts, just asked if her mom had seemed different lately. Dad, she sighed, like I was a kid who'd asked why the sky was blue. Mom's been different for years. You really didn't notice? That kept me up until 2 a.m. The next morning, I did something I'd never done before. I checked Diane's Facebook. We'd been friends on there for a decade, but I never really scrolled through her page. Turns out she posted a lot more than I realized. Pictures of art exhibits I didn't know she'd attended. Check-ins at restaurants we'd never been to together. Comments from some guy named Mark, always just a little too familiar. Great seeing you today, with a winky face. You light up the room. I felt sick, but part of me, the stupid, hopeful part, still clung to doubt. Maybe Mark was just a friend. Maybe this was all in my head. Then I remembered the way Diane had started dressing differently last year. Nothing drastic, just little things. New jeans that fit better, that necklace she never took off, the way she'd started wearing lipstick again after a decade of bare lips. At the time, I'd actually been happy about it, thought maybe she was feeling good about herself. Now I wondered who she'd been dressing up for. The final straw came when I ran into Carol from next door at the mailbox. "How's Diane liking her new yoga class?" she asked, like it was common knowledge. I must have looked confused because Carol's smile faltered. "Oh, she's been going to that studio on Elm every Tuesday and Thursday for months. I just assumed you knew." I nodded like it was nothing. Went inside and poured myself 3 fingers of bourbon at 10:30 in the morning. That's when it hit me. The woman I'd been married to for 28 years had been living a whole separate life right under my nose. And I'd been too wrapped up in my own routines, my own comfortable numbness to even notice. The worst part? I wasn't sure if I was angry at her for leaving, or at myself for not seeing it coming. It was raining the night she came back. Not some romantic movie drizzle, but the kind of cold November downpour that soaks through your shoes before you reach the door. I was sitting in my recliner, half watching the Browns game replay when the knock came. 3 sharp raps that made my chest tighten before I even stood up. Through the peephole, Diane looked like a ghost of herself. Mascara streaked down her cheeks, her hair plastered to her face from the rain. That damn necklace, the one she'd started wearing last year, was still around her neck. I opened the door before I could talk myself out of it. "I didn't know where else to go," she said, her voice cracking on the last word. The part of me that had slept next to this woman for 3 decades wanted to pull her inside, wrap her in a towel, make her a cup of that stupid herbal tea she liked. The part that had spent the last month piecing together her lies just stood there, gripping the doorframe. She smelled like rain and that perfume I'd bought her for our 25th anniversary. The familiarity of it hit me like a punch. "Your key still works," I said, instead of hello. Diane flinched. I didn't want to just walk in. I stepped aside, let her pass. watched as she trailed water across the entryway tile like some kind of fucked up breadcrumb trail leading back to me. She sat on the edge of the couch, our couch, though the divorce papers were still sitting unsigned on the kitchen counter, and stared at her hands. I stayed standing. The space between us felt wider than the living room. "Mark's wife found out," she said finally. The name landed like a brick. I'd known, of course. Known from the receipts and the Facebook comments and the Tuesday yoga classes that never existed. But hearing her say it out loud made my vision go gray at the edges. I should have yelled, should have thrown something. Instead, I just asked the dumbest possible question. "How long?" Diane's shoulders hunched. 8 months. 8 months. 34 weeks. 240-some days of me sitting across from her at breakfast, watching the news while she texted him. Of me telling myself every quiet dinner was just what long marriages looked like. The TV was still on behind me. Some commentator droning about third down conversions. The normalcy of it almost made me laugh. "You're staying tonight?" I asked, like we were discussing a hotel reservation. She nodded, not meeting my eyes. I went to the linen closet, pulled out the spare blanket and pillow we used to keep for the kids' friends, set them on the couch without a word. Upstairs, I lay in our bed, my bed now, staring at the ceiling. Downstairs, the woman who'd shared it with me for most of my adult life was crying softly into a couch cushion. Funny how waiting for the other shoe to drop hurts worse than the landing. Morning light through the blinds woke me before my alarm. The house smelled like coffee, Diane's cheap hazelnut blend, the kind I'd always complained about. For half a second, I forgot. Then I saw her purse on the counter where it hadn't been in months, and everything came rushing back. She was sitting at the kitchen table wearing one of my old Ohio State sweatshirts, both hands wrapped around her mug like she was trying to steal its warmth. The sight of her in my clothes, in my kitchen, after everything, it knocked the breath out of me. "You're up early," I said, reaching past her for a clean mug. My arm brushed her shoulder. We both pretended not to notice. Diane stared into her coffee. Couldn't sleep. I poured my own cup, black, no sugar, and sat across from her. The table between us might as well have been an ocean. Sunlight caught the silver in her hair, the lines around her eyes deeper than I remembered. When did we get so old? "You want to talk about it?" I asked, like we were discussing a fender bender, not the wreckage of our marriage. Her thumb rubbed at the chipped edge of her mug, the one our daughter made at summer camp 20 years ago. "Mark's wife showed up at my apartment yesterday, had photos, emails." A bitter laugh. "Turns out I wasn't the only one he was seeing." The anger came then, hot and sudden, not at Mark. Who gave a shit about Mark? But at Diane. For being stupid enough to fall for it, for making me say it out loud. "So what?" "You thought you were special." The words came out sharper than I meant. Diane flinched. "I thought—" She trailed off, shook her head. "It doesn't matter what I thought." I studied her face, the way her mouth trembled, the dark circles under her eyes. This wasn't the woman who'd walked out on me. This was someone lost. "Why'd you really come here, Diane?" She looked up then, tears spilling over. "Because he wasn't you." The silence that followed was heavier than any argument we'd ever had. Outside, a lawnmower started up down the street. Normal life, moving on without us. I stood, took my coffee to the sink, watched the steam rise as I poured it down the drain. "Guest room's made up if you need it." Her voice followed me down the hall. "Jim, I'm sorry." I didn't turn around. Couldn't. Because the worst part wasn't the betrayal or even the wasted years. It was realizing that in some broken way, I still loved her, and that might just destroy me more than anything else. She stayed. Not like before, not as my wife, but as some ghost of the woman I'd known, haunting the edges of our old life. Diane moved into the guest room, the one we'd once painted yellow for when Lisa brought the grandkids over. Now it held her suitcase and the faint smell of that lavender lotion she'd always used before bed. I found her in the garage on Tuesday, pulling boxes down from the shelves. "Just getting some of my things," she said, like she was a tenant giving notice. Her hand shook as she lifted a crate of old photo albums. Lisa's first steps, our anniversary trip to the Grand Canyon, 30 years of memories reduced to cardboard and dust. You don't have to do this now, I said, though neither of us knew what I really meant. Stay? Go? Pretend we could glue the pieces back together? Diane hugged an album to her chest. I think I do. That night, I lay awake listening to her quiet footsteps pad to the kitchen at 2 a.m., the familiar creak of the cabinet where we kept the glasses, the way she still ran the tap for 3 seconds before filling it, just like always. It was the ordinary things that hurt the most. At breakfast, she started talking about looking for an apartment. There's a complex over on Elm, she said, stirring sugar into coffee she didn't really want. They have month-to-month leases. I nodded like it made sense, like my chest wasn't cracking open at the thought of her moving across town instead of just down the hall. Lisa called on Sunday. Mom says she's staying with you? The disbelief in her voice matched what I'd been feeling all week. Just for a little while, I lied. A pause. Dad, are you too... No, too quick, too sharp. It's not like that. But what was it like? I didn't know anymore. On Thursday, Diane made meatloaf, my favorite, the way only she could make it, with the ketchup glaze and the onions chopped just right. We ate at the kitchen table like a married couple, except we weren't. Not really, not anymore. You remember our first apartment? She asked suddenly. The one with the radiator that wouldn't shut off? I did. How we'd slept in just our underwear that whole first winter, sweating and laughing, and so damn sure we had it all figured out. Diane reached for my hand across the table, stopped halfway, let her fingers curl back into herself. I miss us, Jim. The words hung there between the meatloaf and the peas. I wanted to tell her I missed us, too, that maybe we could try again, that love wasn't supposed to end with photo albums in boxes and separate leases. Instead, I took our plates to the sink, ran the water too hot, watched the grease swirl down the drain. Because the truth was, I did miss us. But the us I missed had died long before Mark ever entered the picture. And no amount of meatloaf or memories could bring it back. That night, I heard her crying through the guest room wall, the same sound I'd listened to for 30 years whenever life got too heavy. Only this time, I didn't go to her. And that, more than any divorce paper, was when I knew it was really over. It's been a year now. Diane moved into that apartment on Elm, the one with the month-to-month lease. She texted me when she got the keys, just a simple, "I'm here." I didn't reply. Not because I was angry, but because I didn't know what to say. What do you tell someone who was your whole life and then one day just wasn't? I kept the house, sold the wedding ring to a pawn shop downtown, and used the money to fix the leaky faucet in the guest bathroom, the one Diane always nagged me about. Funny how that works. Lisa brings the grandkids over sometimes. They don't ask about Diane. Or maybe Lisa told them not to. Either way, I'm grateful. I thought the silence would kill me after she left. But here's the thing no one tells you about silence. It's not empty. It's full of all the things you never said. All the I love yous you skipped because you assumed there'd be time. All the what's wrong. You didn't ask because you didn't want to hear the answer. I saw Diane at the grocery store last month. She was in the cereal aisle, holding a box of the bran flakes I used to hate. We didn't speak, just nodded like acquaintances. Not two people who once knew every freckle on each other's bodies. She looked older. Then again, so do I. Here's what I've learned. Love doesn't die in explosions. It starves to death, slowly, from 1,000 tiny moments of neglect. A missed anniversary. A conversation you didn't have. A hand you didn't reach for when you had the chance. I'm dating now, if you can call it that. Met a woman named Carol at the library. No, not that Carol from next door, who likes fishing and bad horror movies. We get coffee sometimes. It's nice, not fireworks. But maybe that's the point. Maybe real love isn't fireworks at all. Maybe it's just showing up day after day, even when it's hard. I don't hate Diane anymore. I don't know if I ever really did. What I hate is the version of me who took her for granted, who thought love was something you could set on a shelf and forget about, like a trophy that didn't need polishing. So here's my advice. For what it's worth, pay attention. To the small things, to the quiet moments, to the woman sitting across from you at breakfast who might be slipping away while you're too busy reading the paper to notice. And if you're sitting there thinking, that's not us, we're fine, well, that's what I thought too. Life doesn't give do-overs, but it does give maybes. Maybe you'll be smarter than me. Maybe you'll fight harder. Maybe you'll realize what you have before it's gone. Or maybe, like me, you'll just sit in your quiet house one evening, listening to the clock tick, and wonder where all the time went. Either way, I hope you figure it out. I'm still trying.